Hello, everyone. My name is John McDermott, and I work at the Institute for Human Development in Flagstaff, Arizona. Please take the time to adjust the volume of your devices right now. We want to welcome you today to Early Intervention 101, brought to you by Raising Special Kids. Today's presenters are Christopher, Tiffany, and Janna Murrell. This is a listen-only webinar. If you have questions, please put them in the chat area. And the presenters will address them when they can in the webinar or wait until the end. So thank you very much. And I'm going to hand it off to Christopher and Janna.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for Early Intervention 101. Today's webinar is meant to be a foundational training on Arizona's Early Intervention Program for infants and toddlers birth to 3. And my name is Janna, and I'm joined by my colleague, Chris.
My name's Christopher, Tiffany, and thank you all for joining us again for this great webinar.
Chris and I both are with Raising Special Kids, a nonprofit that exists to improve the lives of children with a full range of disabilities from birth to 26 by providing support, training, information, and individual assistance so families can become effective advocates for their children. That's our role with Raising Special Kids. If you are a professional serving families, there is a How to Refer a Family to Raising Special Kids document included in our webinar companion that is available for download. So, John, would you mind displaying that document for us?
This is the webinar companion that kind of mirrors the path of the webinar and the topics that we'll cover. And it's just a good way for you to get additional information on what we're going to be discussing today.
Okay, so thank you, John. We appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and move on to our learning objectives today. There we go. Okay, so our learning objectives today are, we'll talk about under IDEA Part C, Findings and Policy. We'll talk about the Arizona Early Intervention Program and the 7 key principles, the Early Intervention Team and the IFSP Team, the Child and Family Assessment, Functional Outcomes, the Team Lead and FAB Scheduling. We'll talk about Transition Planning Meeting and the Transition Conference, Preschool Eligibility, the IEP or the Individualized Education Program, and then finally Preschool Curriculum Focus. We will also have a question and answer time at the end of the session, so as you have questions, please feel free to jot those down and we'll cover them at the end.
Great, thank you, Janna. So jumping into our first learning objectives, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, is our nation's special education law. Part C of IDEA governs early intervention that serves infants and toddlers from birth until their 3rd birthday. It is these findings that are really the foundation of IDEA Part C and early intervention. So let's take a look at the findings and see what they found. Congress finds that there's an urgent and substantial need to enhance the development of infants and toddlers with disabilities. The findings go on to say that by enhancing the development of infants and toddlers with disabilities, we will do many things. We'll minimize their potential for developmental delay later on in life. We'll reduce the educational costs to our society, including schools, by minimizing the need for special education services when they reach school age. There's also, what we'll also do is maximize their potential to live independently. And the findings also address the need to enhance the family's ability to meet the special needs of their children. So really recognizing the parents as the child's first teacher. So helping families understand their child's diagnosis and best practices in helping them develop. And also the findings address the need to enhance the capacity of state and local agencies to identify, evaluate, and serve these children and families. So after their findings, Because they did find that there was an urgent and substantial need to enhance the development, they moved forward in developing our national policy that provides funding to states to meet this urgent and substantial need. So if we take a look at number 1, we see words like comprehensive and coordinated, interagency, and that services are to be provided not only to infants and toddlers, but also to their families and parents. Again, recognizing that the parents are the child's first teacher. And number 2, the policy addresses how the services will be funded, and again uses that word coordination. Number 3 talks about the need for quality intervention services and continuous improvement of those services. The last bullet point deals with encouraging states, in my opinion, to really think outside of the box when it comes to expanding opportunities for at-risk children under 3. So to sum up, Congress's findings drive our national policy, and our national policy basically puts out a call to states to develop statewide comprehensive and coordinated early intervention programs.
So in our state, the Department of Economic Security is the umbrella agency that tasks the lead state agency, the Arizona Early Intervention Program, to implement the early intervention in Arizona. You will see that the mission for the Arizona Early Intervention Program is that early intervention builds upon and provides supports and resources to assist family members and caregivers to enhance children's learning and development through everyday learning opportunities. We'll talk about, in the next slide, the 7 key principles for early intervention. And we'll be referring to these 7 principles all throughout the webinar today. You will note that key principle number 1 marries very closely to the mission of Arizona's Early Intervention Program that we just discussed on the previous slide, that infants and toddlers learn best through everyday experiences and interactions with familiar people in familiar contexts.
And so, as we get started, we wanted to skip to key principle number 4, which talks about the early intervention process being dynamic and individualized, and reflecting the child and family's preferences, learning styles, and cultural beliefs. One important note to ponder is this. If the early intervention process does not take into account the family's preferences, learning styles, and cultural beliefs, what are the chances that those early intervention services will be successful? So family involvement and buy-in are really critical to serving these infants and toddlers. Early intervention looks different for every single family, and early intervention services are going to change with new developments within the family. So rather than a diagnosis specific, the early intervention services are needs specific for the entire family and not just the child. So we want you to think about that concept of dynamic and individualized, and just grab it and tuck it away in the back of your mind as we run through this webinar. And I think you'll see that as we do run through the webinar, we'll be revisiting that concept often. Okay, so there are over 30 states that currently use team-based early intervention services. This is an evidence-based practice that focuses on teaming, coaching, and on natural learning opportunities. Every family will have a core team of professionals supporting their family, and this consists of the first 5 bullet points you see on the slide. A developmental special instructor, you might know them as a DSI, occupational therapist or an OT, a physical therapist, PT, speech and language pathologist, SLP or speech, and then a service coordinator. We love our acronyms in special education, and if we start learning that we need to use acronyms early, it's going to serve us well. Notice that the 6th bullet point states others as needed. Because each child is different and the needs of each family is different, other professionals may be added to the core team for support. Other members may include a hearing specialist for a child that has a hearing impairment, a vision specialist, a social worker, psychologist, a nutritionist if a child has some feeding issues. So another item that's important to note is that depending on the needs of the child, Service coordination may be provided by the Arizona Early Intervention Program, a contractor with AZIP. Service coordination could be provided by the Division of Developmental Disabilities or the Arizona State School for the Deaf and the Blind. Regardless of who fills which role, Key Principle 3 sums up the role of the service provider very well, and that is to work with and support family members and caregivers in children's lives. So that's our early intervention team. Now this is a different team of people. We're going to talk a little of the IFSP. As key principle number 2 states, all families with the necessary supports and resources can enhance their children's learning and development. The IFSP is the plan that will outline the necessary supports and services needed to enhance this development. The IFSP is developed by the IFSP team, and you and the people who contribute to this first IFSP meeting are outlined in IDEA Part C regulations. So the parent or legal guardian of the child, other family members if requested by the parent, an advocate or other persons outside of the family if requested by the parents, the designated AZIP service coordinator, and again that could be a DDD support coordinator or a service coordinator from ASDB, the person directly involved in conducting the assessment evaluations, and person who will be providing services if appropriate. So think of it this way. Your early intervention team is responsible for implementing interventions with the child and family. Your IFSP team is responsible for creating the individualized family service plan document through a meeting. Both teams are going to work together and share team members, service coordinator, service provider, parent, etc.
A tool that is used to build the IFSP is the Child and Family Assessment. And this relates to key principle number 1 that we just talked about a moment ago. Infants and toddlers learn best through everyday experiences and interactions with familiar people in familiar contexts. That Child and Family Assessment tool is used to build the IFSP and is necessary for identifying strengths, needs, and priorities within the current routines and activities of the family. In other words, it's building on what are some of those current routines and activities that are already going on throughout their day. Additionally, we'll talk about the pieces of the Child and Family Assessment. In key principle number 6, where it states the family's priorities, needs, and interests are addressed most appropriately by a primary provider who represents and receives team and community support. So now we're going to talk a little bit about those priorities, interests, and natural resources as part of the Child and Family Assessment. Within that, there is the summary of routines and activities, and that identifies and summarizes current routines and activities of the family. What routines and activities are going well for the child and family? Where might we need some additional help? When we think of natural resources, we aren't necessarily looking at financial resources. We're trying to identify resources that currently exist in the family's everyday home and community setting. For example, parks, playgrounds, churches, and we also want to extend this to think about people as natural resources. For example, grandparents, neighbors, friends, existing playgroups. Interests are areas where the family would like more information. For example, additional information on childcare, opportunities for my child to play with other children, diagnosis information, or even perhaps talking with another parent. Priorities are routines and activities identified in the Child and Family Assessment that the family has expressed need for home and community participation and inclusion. So let's think of this as an example. Well, as we look at our diagram here, where we combine natural resources, priorities, and interest to produce a functional outcome that's determined by the family. So for example, A family has expressed interest that they want to attend church together as a family. However, right now we're unable to attend due to our son Johnny's inappropriate behaviors during service. Identifying natural resources might be contacting a local nonprofit organization that might help train the family. In addition, an intervention perhaps would be that the occupational therapist attends the first or second service with the family to assist with training and coaching the family with interventions. The functional outcome is that we're attending church together as a family. So to recap, remember discussing that the process should be dynamic and individualized earlier. Child and family assessment identifies what that routine currently looks like. The functional outcome describes what it will look like when it's going well for the family.
So let's talk through another example in thinking of functional outcomes. For this example, the team has identified that grocery shopping is something that has been quite a challenge for the family and something everybody's agreed to work on. So the family, prior to developing this plan, had only been able to go grocery shopping at night when both parents were home and weren't able to take Juan with them. So one parent would stay home with Juan Jr., and the other parent would go and do the weekly shopping. Through discussion, the team agrees that success will look like our outcome listed here. So when Mercedes and Juan Sr. take Juan to the grocery store, they'll be able to keep him interested enough that he will either ride in the cart or walk with them for a trip that doesn't last more than 30 minutes. So that's going to be successful for them. They're not going to try to do a 2-hour big Sunday morning shopping trip. They're going to just do a nice 30-minute in and out. So in looking at the natural resources, we're going to identify the people involved and the item we need to be successful with our intervention, the items. So the people involved are the mom, developmental special instructor, perhaps a neighbor. We're going to use a grocery cart book. And we'll discuss some possible interventions that the team could implement to make progress towards this outcome in just a few slides. But this is a good example that illustrates putting the priorities, the natural resources together to address the functional outcome.
The team lead is chosen after the outcomes are developed. The team uses the identified child and family concerns to identify a likely team lead. The team lead is not chosen until after the outcomes are developed using the information gathered during the evaluation and assessment process. Once the team lead is identified, the team also reviews how other team members will support that team lead and the family to support the child and family's achievement of the outcomes. The team lead is the primary provider. They are not, however, the only provider to the family. The family is supported by the entire team. The other members of the team are always aware of the needs of the family and support the team lead in many ways. The family and the team lead may ask other members of the team to come on a visit, known as a joint visit, to support the family and team lead when they have questions or concerns, or when the team lead does not have the specific skill or expertise required. For instance, if the speech-language pathologist is the team lead for the family, she and the family may ask the occupational therapist or physical therapist on the team to join them for a joint visit when there's a question about positioning the baby to ensure that she is breathing well when they introduce cereal at mealtime. The team lead begins each home visit with a review of the joint plan developed during the previous visit. They explore with the family the successes, any challenges encountered with the previous plan. They may work on refining the prior week's plan, or they may already have a new plan in mind for the current visit. The team lead may observe the family may observe the team lead. They might meet in the bathroom to work on bath time or potty training. They might meet at the kitchen table to work on mealtime, or they might meet in the park to discuss how to ensure that the child can participate in outdoor activities. Every home visit ends with the development of a joint plan. This plan identifies what both the team lead and the family want to do between visits, opportunities for practice. It outlines what strategies and activities each might undertake, and it ends with an agreed upon schedule for the next visit. Rather than having a set 10 a.m. on Tuesday time slot, providers use a flexible, activity-based scheduling that allows them to see families as frequently as needed. Families may need bursts of service, and this flexible, activity-based scheduling allows providers to be more dynamic and responsive to the needs of the families. So we just talked about that flexible, activity-based burst of service. That's what we call FAB or FAB scheduling. Once the decision is made who will serve as the team lead for a particular child and family, the frequency, intensity, and duration of support provided by the team lead and any needed joint visits with the secondary service provider must be specified. I'm going to direct us again to the webinar companion. Included on the, and John, we can just show that if we wanted participants to download it if they're interested.
Yeah, can you pull the file box over, John? Yeah, perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's some excellent examples of how FAB scheduling is flexible and activity-based within the normal routines of a family's daily life. Bursts of service for a newly enrolled child and family, or perhaps a child with a severe feeding challenge. For example, they're losing weight, vomiting, and swallowing issues to address support for all people feeding the child during all meal times.
Great.
Okay.
So maybe just one moment to allow people to download if they're downloading. Okay, let's move on. So let's pause for a moment and take kind of everything that we've heard and put it into context through an example. So Principle 7, we're talking about interventions now. Interventions with young children and family members must be based on explicit principles, validated practices, best available research, relevant laws and regulations. Your early intervention team will work together to identify interventions and support needed to achieve the functional outcomes in your IFSP. So what we've done up to this point is we've had our core team, our core early intervention team. We've sat down, we've created our IFSP, we've done our child and family assessment, we've created some functional outcomes. So now let's take a look at how we can put that all together in context through an example. So think about our child Juan in the grocery store. The interventions that the team put into place were this. The team lead for the family is the developmental special instructor who is the primary service provider for the family. That's the person we identified through the child and family assessment and developing the functional outcomes. She was the best fit for the family. So first, the occupational therapist participated in a joint visit with the DSI to observe the grocery shopping routine, to see where we are right now. The observation resulted in the team agreeing to provide intensive intervention over a 4-week period through FAB scheduling. The family and the early intervention team discussed what types of interventions to use, and in this case, the DSI, working with the parents, created a grocery cart book that helped prepare Juan for grocery shopping and also helped keep him engaged as the family completed the routine. During the 4 weeks of intervention, the service provider assisted the family in redirecting Juan when his behaviors became an issue, and also coaching the family on how to redirect Juan when the behaviors became an issue, and also tried other sensory items at the recommendation of the occupational therapist. At the end of the 4-week period, Juan's parents felt confident in taking him grocery shopping, preparing for the trip, and how to redirect him when needed. Although their shopping trips aren't perfect, the family can now participate in an activity that they had not been successful for in several months. Okay, so transitioning. We're going to switch gears to the process of transitioning out of early intervention services. So to ensure a smooth transition for a child turning 3, regulations, policies, and procedures are in place to help the transition out of early intervention program and into an early childhood program if the parents choose to do so. Depending on when the child becomes eligible for early intervention services, the process begins around the child's 2nd birthday. It starts with a discussion with the family about what their thoughts are for their child when they turn 3, and what possible early childhood programs may be available for the child and the family. The service coordinator helps the family understand the different transition activities required of the IFSP team in the upcoming several months. And here are some of the possible programs that may be available for young children with a disability. We have our early childhood special education that we'll talk more about this. Head Start programs could be an option. A private preschool like a Tutor Time or a Kidsville or something like that. Daycares, continued DDD, Arizona Long-Term Care, home and community-based services, or services through the Arizona Schools for the Deaf and the Blind. So, transition planning. One requirement is that an IFSP transition planning meeting must be held between the time the child is 2 years and 6 months and 2 years 9 months old. It can happen earlier, as early as 2 years 3 months if everybody agrees to that. Think of 2 years 9 months as this kind of magical number, this magical age in the process, and it ensures that if a child is going into the local public school, that the school district will have enough time to fully evaluate and plan for the child to enter their program on their 3rd birthday. In this meeting, in this transition planning meeting, the team will have conversations about the steps necessary to support the parents in gathering additional information about early childhood programs of interest, such as meeting with representatives of programs, visiting programs, talking to other parents, etc. They'll also have conversations about specific steps needed to support the child's successful transition to the program of choice. So steps that can help the child adjust to and function in a new setting. They'll also have discussions about identifying any transition services that the IFSP team determines are needed by the child and his or her family. So perhaps familiarizing the child with the school setting by helping the family develop some social stories or picture schedules. AZIP and state agencies, Department of Education, have agreements in place to automatically refer children to their local public school to ensure a smooth transition from early intervention to early childhood special education. If the parent has other plans for the child when they turn 3, they can opt out of this automatic referral process in writing, and the child's information won't be sent to the public school. At any time, the parent can certainly change their mind and contact their local public school and begin the process over again. So you're not locked in. Parents can always revoke consent and then reconsent for services if they want to. If at the transition planning meeting, the parent agrees to a transition conference, it will take place between 2 years 6 months and 2 years 9 months. And again, if everyone agrees, it can happen earlier, as early as 2 years 3 months. It should take place at a time and location convenient for the family, and if possible, include representatives from the early childhood programs that the parents are interested in. The focus of the transition conference is to revise the transition plan developed at the prior IFSP meeting, or develop the transition plan if the conference is also the initial IFSP meeting. And also to provide parents with information about various programs they're interested in, as well as the steps that the transition conference attendees will take to support the parents in their decision making. So think of it as, the folks that are at the transition conference may have action items to help the parents visit certain programs or explore other options. The transition conference summary will document any action steps determined necessary by the team, who is responsible, and by what date. And that's a piece of the IFSP, is that, or it's an additional document called the Transition Conference Summary. Okay, as promised, I said we'd talk about early childhood special education, so we're going to talk about that. So let's suppose that we go through our transition planning meeting and the parents and they're really looking forward to their child's enrollment at the public special education preschool. Depending on where you are, this program may be called different things. Some school districts call it their developmental preschool. Some call it a priority preschool. Some call it some long big acronym that doesn't seem to relate to preschool at all, but it is in fact their early childhood special education program. Regardless of what it's called, the program serves children 3 to 5 years old, and it has its own evaluation and eligibility process. We're not going to go too much into the detail of the process right here, but just know that many children transitioning out of early intervention are eligible, and those who aren't eligible may have other options available to them, like a Head Start program. I'll talk just a little bit about preschool eligibility. Eligibility for early childhood special education or preschool special education is determined by a multidisciplinary evaluation team, and the child would need to meet the eligibility criteria for one of these categories. And again, on our webinar companion, there's more information about eligibility criteria for each of these categories. So developmental delay, preschool severe delay, visual and hearing impairments, and speech and language impairment. You can find more information there on the eligibility criteria to get into the developmental or preschool special education. If your child is eligible for early childhood special education, they're going to receive this special education and related services as is listed in the child's individualized education program. And again, you won't see the F in that acronym because the family gets dropped. And when we move to preschool, it's child-focused and not family-focused. But the requirement is to provide specially designed instruction to meet whatever those unique needs are of the child. The IEP must be in place by the child's 3rd birthday to provide the child, provided the child is eligible for early intervention services prior to 2 years, 9 months of age. Again, that's that magic number that we talked about earlier. The child is afforded a free and appropriate public education. That's also known as FAPE. And FAPE for a child is determined by that child's IEP team. So if you miss the 2-year, 9-month cut, you pretty much go straight to the school district's Child Find program. And depending on how close the child is to their 3rd birthday, the service coordinator will assist in making the referral and help the family with a plan to transition into that program. For children eligible for DDD and Arizona Long-Term Care, they're automatically going to be referred to the DDD Children's Unit. This is a little bit of information on what they're going to be learning in preschool. So once the IEP is developed and the child begins his or her school career in preschool, we're still focused on developmental skills. So we're still cognitive development. We're thinking about things like problem solving and thinking. Physical development, fine and gross motor skills, appropriate pencil grasp, and accessing the playground appropriately. Communication development, expressive and receptive communication, natural speech, sign language or through a communication device, social and emotional development. Some examples are appropriate peer interaction, socialization, behavior, and then adaptive development, self-help skills, toileting, feeding, dressing, etc. Our children Our children had been served through an IFSP, which focuses on teaming with and coaching families to support children. Now our children are served through an IEP, which focuses on supports and services for teachers and students. The EP and family gets dropped from the plan as the child goes off to their new job, which ultimately is school that they'll be in for the next several years of their life. Okay. We want to thank you for your participation today, and we want to open it up to questions at this point. And as you see on the slide here, you can enter to win a free iPad by clicking the appropriate link below, parents and family members or professionals. And that drawing will be right around Christmas time. We're thinking beginning of December. So if you're the winner, you can choose to keep it and hang on to it and give yourself a Christmas present, or you can give it away to somebody that you want. And I see somebody is typing a question here. To qualify. Okay, the question is, to qualify for developmental preschool, you have to hit 2 of the domains that we listed. Yes, that is accurate. So they would need to meet the eligibility criteria. Let me pull that back up. Well, it depends actually. For developmental delay and preschool severe delay, yes, it would need to be a deficit depending on which eligibility category in 2 or more of these areas. You could theoretically qualify for developmental preschool with speech and language only, but that's going to be up to the individual districts themselves. Some districts are just providing speech and language services, once a week rather than those children going into the developmental preschool. Good question. Thank you, Kelly. And also to get more information on that, Kelly, the Arizona Department of Education has all of the eligibility criteria for those categories on slide, what is it? I'll just go back here real quick. Yeah, the Arizona Department of Education has eligibility criteria for each of these, and you can go look and see specifically what they need to be eligible for those services under that. I agree. That is always confusing for parents. And certainly if you're working with parents that have any kind of confusion over this process, we do have family support specialists located all over the state, and we'd be more than happy to connect with them and talk them through the process and even connect them with another parent if that's appropriate. And you can see the referring families to raising special kids document there. It's a real easy way to refer families to us. Gives us permission to call them. And we do have a preschool to kindergarten, AZIP to preschool transition training it's a little bit, it goes into a lot more depth than we were able to cover here today in a short webinar. It's actually a 1.5 hour to 2 hour presentation that really gets into the requirements and transitioning from Part C services to Part B services. So, okay, so Kelly, I'll get you first here. In the file box open in front of you, there's Referring Families to Raising Special Kids document that you can actually download right from the screen, or you can go to our website, www.raisingspecialkids.org, and there's information there on how to refer families as well. Sarah, sorry, it went kind of fast. What's the difference between natural resources, priorities, and interests?
Oh, good question, Sarah. The differences are, so let's refer back to the slide that we were on for Chris. That's going to be slide number.
Child and Family Assessment?
Yes, it's going to be number 11.
This one? Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. So natural resources are going to be those things that already exist in the family's life that is a strength that the team can draw from. An interest is in an area where a family wants more information. So for example, they're looking for childcare, they're wanting more opportunities for their kids to play with other children, those kinds of things. So that's an area of interest. Yes.
Let's jump in with some examples of what natural resources could be too.
Oh, yes.
So natural resources are not only things, it's also people. So
Right.
a natural resource a family might have is their neighborhood park. That might be a place that they can go to that can help their child in their early intervention program. A natural resource could also be the grandparent. If the child spends a couple hours a day with the grandparent or sees them regularly on weekends. Natural resources can be a number of things that already exist within that family's life that they can utilize to assist in their early intervention program.
Right. And yes, and another example would be an existing play group that's already in their neighborhood. That would be a natural resource. The priority, the difference between that is that's what the family has indicated is what they've expressed need for the more home and community participation and inclusion. So in other words, we've talked about routines and activities that we've identified in that child and family assessment, those normal routines and activities that they do, like for example, the normal things that they do throughout their day, and then and whenever they express the need for more home and community participation and more inclusion, for example, the grocery shopping, that would be a priority.
That was identified as a priority for
Exactly.
for Juan and Mercedes, and that's what the team ultimately built a functional outcome around.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, let's go up a little bit. We missed some questions. Have parents and families. We do ages and stages screening. If the child has a need, symptoms, birth to 5 helpline, also AZIP, raising special needs referrals with. Absolutely, Rosemary. You can refer families to us at any time. We are a comprehensive family resource center. We try to meet parents where they are and help them understand and navigate systems. We also have a very robust parent-to-parent program that helps connect families of children with similar diagnosis. So maybe we have a newly diagnosed mom of a child with autism that doesn't have any access to other parents. We can help connect her to another mom of a child with autism. So that's a very good referral, Rosemary. The difference between the team members of the early intervention and the IFSP team. Good question, Jamie. What's the difference between your early intervention team and your IFSP team? Your early intervention team consists of your core team. So every child's going to have a DSI, a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, and a physical therapist. So those 4 people, and the service coordinator, and the parent. So those are the core team members and the parent. With the IFSP team, you may not have the physical therapist at that meeting or the occupational therapist if the bulk of the services are really being provided through the DSI and the speech. Also, the early intervention team is not defined in IDEA rules and regulations. So that's another key difference, is that the IFSP team has certain people that have to be there. The early intervention team operates under the AZIP policies and procedures, and they have a requirement to team and meet quarterly to talk about each child that's on their caseload. But as we talked about earlier, teams are going to share members. Generally, you know, your early intervention team members are going to be, not all of them all of the time, but are going to be participating in your IFSP development. Will this webinar be archived for families and professionals to access at their convenience? Yes, Maria, it is going to be archived, and it will be up probably, John, I don't know, Neil, within a week or so. Would that be fair? Yeah, we're going to get that up as soon as possible. And is there a mechanism for letting everybody know? Is there a mechanism for letting people know when it's? Okay.
Great.
So we'll send out an email to everybody that attended this webinar when it does become available on our website and how you can find it. Oh, and Neil already answered that question. All right. Yes.
Did we miss any about that? I think we got
I
them
don't
all.
think we did. Well, we want to thank everybody for spending their lunch hour with us, and we hope that this was useful to you, and we hope that if it is useful to the people that you serve, or if you know anybody else that could benefit from this, that you'll go ahead and check it out on our website. I do see somebody typing again, so we'll just hold off a little bit. Oh, just a thank you very much. Well, thank you, Jamie, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Again, feel free to call Raising Special Kids anytime, question, or if you want to refer a family, or if you know anybody that could benefit from our services.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.